2024 was a pretty eventful year for games, and I played through the entirety of quite a few games this year. But I don't have all the time in the world, so larger titles like Metaphor ReFantazio or Stalker 2, I just didn't have the time to play. I did have time to play a lot of other games I was excited for. Whether or not I liked them in the end is a different question. This year seriously was packed with a lot of good games, and I'm going to be spending probably the first half of 2025 just catching up on all the games I didn't play from last year. If it were up to me, which it entirely is, I would talk about the games I liked first and then the games I didn't. But I'm going to have some restraint, and I'm going to go in order of when I played each game, all the way from January to December. Oh, and this list only contains games that I completed entirely from start to finish. I'm not going to put a quarter of Final Fantasy VIII on here just because I'm technically playing it. I also won't be covering games that I play annually, like Resident Evil 1, 4, and Silent Hill 2 and 3, among some other games. And not all the games on this list are from 2024 as well. As long as I played it last year, it's on here. I don't really like long intros, and I'm not really good at transitioning into the main things, so, Spider-Man 2 is, it's fine. I actually had pretty little interest in playing this game, which is weird because I fairly enjoyed Spider-Man PS4 and Miles Morales. The reason why this game is on this list is because I didn't play it until early January. I bought it for my brother for Christmas, and he said I could play it first. I wasn't playing anything else at the time, so I said, fuck it, why not? I can say with confidence that I definitely prefer the first one to the sequel. Something about the story just wasn't as appealing to me as the first, and I love Venom as a character. Unfortunately, he's not even in the game for very long. We get a lot of the symbiote suit and even some Agent Venom, which is kinda crazy, but Venom himself is barely in the game. Maybe the last fifth if I had to remember. Also, I know this was like forever ago, but I'm still not used to the new Peter face. If I'm going to be playing as a 27-year-old Peter Parker, then I want him to look like a washed-up 27-year-old, not a young adult. He seriously looks the same age as Miles at times. Okay, Peter face aside, the game is seriously a lot of fun. Just swinging around New York and now Queens is even more addicting than it was in the prior two games. Peter and Miles now have a new wingsuit too, but if you don't like using it, then you can just choose not to use it too. Can you tell I don't really have much to say about this game? When I was going through my catalog for games I completed this year, I almost completely forgot about this one. Okay, let's go into the next game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is probably my game of the year, and yes, I am entirely biased. Final Fantasy is a franchise that has evolved and changed its direction so many times that it's hard to call it the same franchise sometimes. But if there's one thing Square never lost, it's that sense of pure presentation. Final Fantasy has probably been the most high-budget JRPG franchise for quite some time now, and it definitely still shows. I'm not trying to imply that throwing more money at a game's development will ensure a greater game, that's definitely not the case. However, from a pure presentation level, these games have never failed to impress me. Fortunately, Rebirth is great in all other aspects too. If you're not a fan of Final Fantasy, don't start with this one. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is part 2 of a trilogy to remake the original Final Fantasy VII from 1997. I say remake, but calling it a remake isn't very accurate anymore, it's more like a reinterpretation. I love these games, but it's clearly intended for fans of the original. You could start with Final Fantasy VII Remake, but the ending of that game was so filled with fan service, it would probably leave you with more questions than answers. Who's this guy that dresses like Cloud but with black hair? Now, you could play the 2007 PSP spin-off to find that out, but then that would spoil the biggest plot twist in the original game. That won't be revealed until part 3 of this remake trilogy. See what I mean? Rebirth isn't any better, by the way. They're still not going to explain who Zack is to you, among other things. Now, personally, I had no trouble playing the original. I played it way before the remake trilogy even came out, but I'm unsurprisingly a lot younger than the original, and the grand majority of people my age would probably have zero interest or motivation to play a game as old as FF7. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to get anyone born in the mid to late 2000s to play most PS2 games that aren't an extremely high-effort port to Steam in 1080p 60 FPS. Okay, zoomer rant aside, for fans of Final Fantasy, Rebirth is one of the most fantastic JRPG experiences I've had in a long time. I'll say right off the bat that I think the original FF7 is a little overrated. It's a great game, but compared to the other two PS1 entries, it aged like straight milk. The models were extremely rudimentary, even for PSX standards, and the translation was at best serviceable, and at worst, it outright lied to the player. If you ask me, FF9 and FF10 were much better entries. The one thing FF7 undeniably excelled at was its cast. You could argue FF7 had the best cast in any FF or any JRPG, and I don't think I'd even be able to disagree with you. And thankfully, in Rebirth, we finally have the full party. I know people love these characters, but I don't think people give enough credit to the actors for just how well they bring these characters to life. I think the one character who doesn't get enough credit is Barrett. John Eric Bentley does so much to turn an already great character into one of my favorites. Whenever I read a manga and I decide to check out an anime or some other adaptation, I'll check out the dub to see how the voice actors decided to approach the character they're adapting. And sometimes they'll be pretty spot on, but other times you'll be greeted with a voice that just didn't quite match what was in your head. Like, when you read Berserk, most of us probably gave Guts a pretty similar voice. His design and dialogue are really good for that. But here's what the 1999 Berserk Dreamcast game gave him.
I don't trust you, Balzac. I sense that you're not coming clean with me on this. But I'll do it. For my Casca.
Excellent. We have an agreement.
I know I just trashed on the FF7 translation a little while ago, but when playing FF7, the voice I gave Barrett in my head is exactly what the voice actor decided to perform. And this applies to pretty much every actor for the main cast. Zack sounds so much better than he did in the Crisis Core remake, Aerith is just as sassy and sweet as ever, Vincent is so unapologetically emo, it's amazing, Yuffie is such a little shit stain and smartass, it's hilarious, and Tifa is, well, she's nice. The reason why I said Final Fantasy can change so much is because the franchise can wildly differ in its gameplay systems depending on the entry. From the active time battle system, the conditional turn-based system, Final Fantasy XIV is an MMORPG, and Final Fantasy XVI forgoes any RPG mechanics in favor of a stylish character action game. The Final Fantasy VII Remake, simply put, combined the tactical aspect of the turn-based classic Final Fantasy with the fluidity of FF15's real-time combat. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth improves upon this system in nearly every way. If Final Fantasy went with this direction for the mainline entries for like the next 10 years, then I'd be perfectly fine with that. Actually, 10 years is like one Final Fantasy game these days, they take so fucking long to make, let's make it 20 years. Don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy XVI is great, it's insanely fun to play, but I don't think it's what I want for the rest of the Final Fantasy franchise. But I don't think Square would be crazy enough to make the next one also a crazy action game, that would just be insane. Rebirth's updated gameplay is almost immediately noticeable upon playing the opening chapters. For this time around, Cloud has an actual way to combat air enemies now. By executing a dodge immediately followed by a light attack, Cloud will send a low damage green projectile that will track aerial enemies. Aerith, who wasn't the most interesting character to play in Remake, she can now zip around, summon rewards, and with proper setup, she could become one of the most destructive members of your party. Yuffie, aside from Cloud, probably has the highest skill ceiling than any other member, and she's an extremely quick and fun character to play. The materia system is better than ever. It was one of my favorite systems in the original because of just how versatile it was. If you wanted Cloud to be your main healer, you could totally do that, and the same applies here. Square Enix has basically struck gold with the development cycle of this game. A lot of the heavy lifting and planning was done for Remake, so with a lot of the resources already developed, the development cycle of this game only took 4 years to make. JRPGs of this caliber do not take 4 years to make. For context, Final Fantasy XVI took 7 years to make, and you could beat that game in like 30 hours if you rushed the main story. If Squeenix wants to get Part 3 out in time for the 30th anniversary of the original, then they would have to make it in 3 years. AAA development times are only getting longer and longer, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, so getting out a game this big in less than 4 years would probably be the best use of pre-existing developmental resources I've seen in a long time, next to the likes of Fallout New Vegas. The way Rebirth is able to have a mostly silly tone and then switch to completely serious and dreary moments on a whim without feeling even a hint of tonal whiplash is almost commendable. I'm serious when I say that this game can go from the party having an anime beach episode to Zack barely surviving in a soon-to-die world with some of the most saddest, hopeless music I've ever heard from a game. The majority of the main story had me smiling from ear to ear, but still managed to make me bawl my eyes out at the ending of the game, especially during the very rushed date at the end of the game. If you played it, you know what I'm talking about. After its over 80-hour main story, Rebirth made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me mad, and sometimes what felt like every conflicting emotion at once. That's not something I think I can say for any remake ever made. All because of the creative liberties that they take with this trilogy keeps you on your toes so much, you never really know what to expect. I don't think I've ever played a game so consciously aware of how and when they want the player to feel something. They know exactly when to drop the main melody or musical leitmotifs for specific characters. Not a lot of games make such an explicit effort to make the character feel a specific way with a large emphasis on musical cues alone. This happened in Final Fantasy VII Remake 2. During the opening mission of that game, the game will tease you with the original battle theme, but it will shift the melody as to not let you hear the entire thing. As you play further into the opening mission, you're teased more and more with the original theme, until finally, at the very end, you're rewarded with hearing the original battle theme fully remastered with a full orchestra. It's an insanely well-crafted opening, and it was clear from this point onward, Square Enix was going to have an extremely thoughtful direction with how the music is presented in this trilogy. The fact that the soundtrack contains over 400 unique songs is insane. So many artists had to come together to create these songs, and the fact that this game can balance genuinely emotional orchestral pieces with genuinely good EDM tracks about a fucking dog is an achievement in itself. I genuinely couldn't decide if I should have voted for Rebirth or Silent Hill 2 for best soundtrack. I had to go with Silent Hill in the end because I've been listening to that soundtrack on repeat for years. I don't really give two shits about the Game Awards, by the way. Alright, well, I've praised this game a lot, but I can't just critique the other games in this video and give this one a pass. I gotta be fair to all. One of the most baffling decisions in this game is the inclusion of a few cutscene QuickTime events, which I'm not usually opposed to in games. But in this game I counted only 3 of them, during 3 of the most emotional and important moments in the plot. There's one at the very beginning of the game where you have to press left and right to slowly crawl Cloud across a road. This is one of the most important events for Cloud's entire character, and as far as I remember, the cutscene QTEs go away for basically the rest of the game, only for them to come back during the last chapter. Twice. During 2 of the most memorable scenes from the original. I seriously don't know why they couldn't just leave these moments as cutscenes. It's not like this game is any stranger to long cutscenes anyways. I know for the last one it was also technically a QTE in the original, but I'd argue it would have worked better as just part of the FMV cutscene anyways. Okay, QTEs aside, that's just what bothered me the most. No game is perfect, and even the best games have one annoying or bad level. Rebirth isn't an exception to this either. You see, later in the game, there's a mission where the gang will go back to Cloud's hometown, and during this mission, you'll be forced to play a singular party member for almost an hour. The game does this a couple times before, but here it's a party member that wasn't really popular in the original, and not everyone's favorite here. It's Cait Sith. I'm talking about Cait Sith. It's really unfortunate because this chapter comes after so many banger chapters before it. The game picked up so much momentum just to lose it all in such a short period. But it's fine because right after we meet the emo vampire, and it's followed by the best chapter in the game because I got to go on a date with my girlfriend. One last thing I can think of doesn't personally affect me, but I know it will for others. You see, Tetsuya Nomura has a certain writing style, and it's not everybody's jam. All I'll say is that if you don't like Kingdom Hearts bullshit, you're not going to like the later chapters of this game. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a pretty faithful remake up until the end, and I'm sorry to report to you that this game is basically the same way. You know how I said earlier that the last chapters of this game made me feel every conflicting emotion at once, in a good way? Well, if you don't like Nomura's writing style, you're probably just going to be left frustrated. I personally really like what they're doing, and I'm having a fun time theorizing with my friends about what they're going to do in Part 3. I mean, wouldn't you guys just get bored if the story was a complete one-to-one remake? We'd be waiting almost a decade for a series we knew exactly how it would end. And now with all the changes made in Rebirth, I'm pretty sure they're going to have to make a new Advent Children after all this. Which I wouldn't be opposed to. I love Advent Children to death, but I'll be the first to admit that from an actual film perspective, it's pretty mediocre. They really went 3 for 3 with mediocre Final Fantasy movies. None of these movies are good when critiqued as real movies. I do hope they remake Advent Children though, and then they can get rid of Cloud's terrible southern Kentucky accent.
Vincent, will you bring Marlene to Tifa? I'm gonna go see Shinra and get a few answers.
I can't do that.
It's so fucking good, man. Okay, I actually have a really funny story about this movie. Back in February, I went to go see this movie in theaters at my local AMC, where we go from magic to cry to laugh and to care. And sitting next to me was this couple on their first date, and this dude brought this poor girl to see Advent Children at a rescreening, and she was so confused by the entire thing. Advent Children, a sequel to an RPG from 1997. Bringing your date to that has got to be a bottom 3 movie for a first date, right next to Schindler's List and the end of Evangelion. Can you guys remember the last time a good multiplayer game focused around PvE combat with little to no anti-consumer practices existed? Because I can't. Compared to other games on this list, I actually only put around 35 hours on this game, which is quite low for most multiplayer games. But even then, I still had a lot of fun from what I played. The thing that impressed me the most is just the general locomotion and movement systems in the game. Ever since I played Metal Gear Solid 5, I've been searching for a game with that style of movement ever since. The Last of Us Part 2 got very close, and that gameplay was also very addicting. But Helldivers 2 is definitely as close as something has gotten to replicating that feeling. Hey guys, so I was writing that segment in early December, and then they announced a huge update during the Game Awards, so now I gotta rewrite everything here, because the game is now really fun again. The new update is really fun. I can't believe it took this long to get a vehicle in the game, and it's really fun. The new faction is probably my favorite to fight now, and it's probably the closest we're going to get to fighting an alien force like the Covenant. Oh, and urban combat is my crack. I much prefer fighting in a smaller city than running 5 kilometers to the next objective like it was in the base game. The one thing I don't like was the developer's outlook on balancing the game. Co-op PvE shooters don't really have a competitive meta. There's no balancing that's crucial to the experience because at the end of the day, the game is just supposed to be fun with your friends. The second you and your friends would start to have fun with weapons and stratagems, the developers would nerf them into oblivion. The weapons got weaker, the enemies got stronger, and the game got really frustrating. Also, I got on to fight the brand new faction, the Illuminatives, and I wasn't allowed to fight them because they weren't currently invading any planets. I understand doing this a few months after they dropped, but this was like a week after the update. Overall, I still really like Helldivers 2, and I'm excited to see where the game is in like a year. Hopefully they'll have a new faction by then too, but I'd really like to see more vehicles, more weapons, and a lot of more armor. I have a lot of thoughts on Stellar Blade. I don't think I've been this conflicted on a video game in a long time. I want to say that before this game came out, I had been following it for years, ever since it was initially revealed as Project Eve with her insanely better default costume. I was really hyped for whatever this game was going to be, and I was really expecting it to be a fun character action game along the likes of Bayonetta, Ninja Gaiden, DMC, or even Final Fantasy XVI. I don't really think it was wrong to assume this based off of the early trailers because of the way they were advertising this game as an absolutely crazy and over-the-top action game. So what kind of game did Stellar Blade turn out to be? Well, I'm happy to report that the game came out to be It's a Sekiro Souls-like. It's a Sekiro Souls-like. Okay, maybe it's on me for not paying more attention to the later trailers, but I was not happy to see this game take inspiration from a genre that's already pretty oversaturated. Like, remember The Surge 2? I don't. Ever since Sekiro came out, there's been an influx in these simple R1 to block or L1 or square to attack type action games, usually with a Dark Souls bonfire system and simple combat with little room for experimentation. Sometimes these games are called parry slop, but I think that's a bit too negative. In my opinion, a lot of these games rarely capture that feeling I get when playing Sekiro. Of course, games like this have existed before Sekiro, but after it, a lot of games have become more comfortable settling for this low skill ceiling for combat that fails to interest me in a lot of games that go over the 10-hour mark. It's unfortunate because most of these games have some really good ideas, but I just can't stand such a simplistic combat system. Also, before I continue, I want to say I did not play Black Myth Wukong because I know that game has a similar combat system. I didn't get to play that one because I didn't really like the streamer guidelines they posted. They really turned me off, but maybe I'll get to it next year if I find time. I'm really sorry if this comes off as more cynical as it sounds, but if you ask me, Sekiro is one of the only games to do this type of combat right, and I'm not joking when I say that the sound design is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. People take sound design severely for granted. It can elevate an otherwise pretty okay action scene into a really good one, as long as the sound effects are really well crafted. I'm of the opinion that the sword clashing noises in Sekiro elevate the combat to a level that wouldn't be possible with just your usual block, dodge, or attack type combat. In Sekiro, the game plays 2 different noises depending on whether you performed a regular block or a perfect parry. When you execute a string of perfect parries, the audible feedback is perfect at letting you know that you've mastered the timing. Stellar Blade really only gives a similar feeling in boss battles with similarly sized opponents. Okay, enough about Sekiro. Stellar Blade and other games like Star Wars Jedi Survivor just feel slower and more restrictive by comparison. Stellar Blade has a similar system to Bayonetta where you can execute unique attacks by entering strings of different combinations of the light and heavy attack. However, this is also the same issue seen in Bayonetta games, where the game never requires the player to execute anything other than the standard light attack combo. You can beat Bayonetta by just mashing the punch button, so long as you're dodging and activating Witch Time. Stellar Blade, similarly, has an attack string that does a lot of damage, and you'll never really need to do anything other than this once you find an opening to attack. Aside from the flashy beta and burst attacks you can do, which by the way don't really flow into normal attacks in a satisfying way at all, Stellar Blade's combat doesn't really offer much room for the player to really experiment, and that's not really what I'm looking for in a game that's nearly 20 to 30 hours long. Another issue with these types of games is that the combat is usually designed around one-on-one combat, so once you start to introduce more enemies at once, sometimes it can start to fall apart. Games like Jedi Fallen Order have the Force so that you can slow down groups of enemies, and Sekiro gives you plenty of tools and movement options to figure out how to make larger groups of enemies more digestible. Stellar Blade does have wide sweeping attacks, but if you're caught in a group of enemies, you can very quickly enter what I like to call Stun City. I really hope this game gets aerial combat in the next entry. I would love for the combat to be turned up to 100, to keep up with the absolutely absurd feats we see Eve do in the cutscenes. Okay, speaking of Eve, let's talk about her. The story in this game isn't the best, but before we get into that, we should probably talk about the elephant in the room. Yes, this game takes inspiration from Nier, but aside from the ambient tracks and the soundtrack, and the post-apocalyptic setting, the similarities pretty much end there. The story really wasn't the best. The plot twist at the end of the game is really obvious if you know even a little bit about the Bible, and I'm not even religious. Think about it, the three main characters are Adam, Eve, and Lily. Eve herself really isn't the most interesting of a character. She has character development, but the scenes where she does are few and far between. Her personality is also not the most interesting. Her naivety towards the world around her is interesting at first, but she rarely ever speaks out to share her thoughts on something. When conversing with others, she mainly just agrees and goes back to doing her objective. At the very beginning of the game, when disaster strikes and Eve has to watch her friend die, I don't think Eve shows this much emotion for the rest of the game. The worst part is that a lot of the fanbase barely talk about the story or the combat. They're more interested in talking about other things. And another very, very vocal minority just uses the game to fuel their imaginary culture war, so you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone really talking about the game's plot. Also, regarding the plot, this game features 3 endings. I won't spoil anything, I promise. One of the endings is bad, another is good, and then there's a true ending. The bad ending has a unique final boss, while the good and true ending have another, and unfortunately the final boss for the bad ending is like 10 times better and more interesting than the final boss for the good ending. I won't show gameplay for either of them to avoid spoilers, but the music for the bad ending final boss is so good I straight up almost started levitating. While most of the side quests are just boring fetch quests, some of the quest lines introduce genuinely interesting side characters. All the side characters gather in this small city called Zion that you can come back to and do quests for, in exchange for costumes and accessories or money. By the end of the game, when all the side characters are standing at the entrance before you head off for the final mission, I had spent so much time doing every single side quest that I actually kind of got attached to these characters, maybe even more so than the main cast. I'm sorry that I'm so negative towards this game. It's not a bad game in any capacity, but I don't really think it's doing anything groundbreaking either. It's just an action game with the standard shallow combat. Okay, let's talk about the even bigger elephant in the room. Yeah, her butt is big, but that's really about it. It's barely hornier than Street Fighter. I bought the Nier DLC because I really like 2B's design in general, and I really wish the game did an upskirt Eve every time you run. A lot of Eve's outfits are severely over-designed too, like look at this swimsuit you can unlock. Actually, now that I think about it, there's a severe lack of consistency with the character design. Some characters, like this cyber samurai guy that I can't remember the name of, look so out of place compared to the rest of the cast. That, alongside that swimsuit, looks straight up like it was designed with AI, but I don't think they would ever do that, right? Oh. That's the director of the game retweeting and posting AI on his Twitter. Oh. I didn't hate everything in the game. For one, the designs for the Naytibas are absolutely fantastic. Whoever designed all the monsters did an incredible job, and I need whoever designed them to work on a new Gears of War game, because they would do an incredible job making Locust enemies. The music is also phenomenal. While I couldn't really care for most of the Nier-inspired tracks, most of the boss tracks are absolutely amazing. The song I've been using in the background was this crazy Japanese metalcore song for our later boss. And I also almost lost my shit for one of the electronic tracks for the second to last boss. It's so fucking good, man. I seriously almost voted for best soundtrack for this game alongside FF7 and Silent Hill 2, but like I said earlier, I had to go with Silent Hill because Akira Yamaoka is an absolute genius. If they end up turning Stellar Blade into a trilogy of games, and if they improve upon everything I have wrong with it, I can totally see it being a solid trilogy, just with a bit of a rough first entry. Think of it like Uncharted or The Witcher, where the first game is good, but the next two improved so much that it overshadows the first. I honestly was hesitant to even cover Shadow of the Erdtree, seeing as it isn't a full release but a major expansion for Elden Ring. But I decided to play this from a complete fresh playthrough because I haven't beaten Elden Ring since it came out in 2022. The two playthroughs I played were on PC when the game came out, but I decided to play Shadow of the Erdtree on PS5, meaning I needed to start fresh. The reason why I decided to cover Shadow of the Erdtree is because after a full run of the game, I accumulated nearly 200 hours on a single run with the DLC. Elden Ring is a pretty good game, all things considered. One of my main issues with the base game, and in the DLC unfortunately, is that you could do an entire mini-dungeon to get a really strong item, but if it didn't pertain to your build, you basically wasted your entire time. Some of these dungeons could take upwards of 30 minutes just for you to get nothing relevant to your character. Unfortunately, like I said, this issue still exists in the DLC, which is really frustrating. I understand lunar tiers exist for you to respec your character, but in most cases a lot of players have little to no interest in completely changing their build, assuming they already spent smithing stones upgrading weapons pertaining to their build. Aside from that issue, the DLC is still really good. I love a good expansion to an already great game. I've been riding the high of Phantom Liberty for like a year and a half. The main bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree are all really good. I won't spoil the final boss if you somehow don't know already who it is, but the optional side bosses are incredible. Midra was by far one of my favorites. This fight kicked my ass, and even if Elden Ring lore isn't as interesting to me as prior Souls games, the entirety of the Frenzied Flame stuff was always my favorite, and I felt like this boss fight was made just for people like me. When I played the base game, I thought to myself, man, they're probably not going to make a boss fight with as much sauce and spectacle as Pseudosax. When I played the final boss, I thought it came close, but then I played the DLC, and they made a boss fight with more sauce and spectacle as Dragon Lord Pseudosax.
I hereby vow you will rue this day. Oh, a true great warrior.
This fight goes so fucking crazy. Before this fight, you get this crazy giant katana that's meant to slay dragons, and with this weapon in hand, I don't think I've ever seen a more blatant homage to Monster Hunter than this. It truly feels like FromSoft was making a love letter to the franchise. Also, I lied when I said Pseudosax was the coolest looking boss battle in this game. I don't ever plan on making an Elden Ring video, so I'm okay with stating this here, but the final boss of Elden Ring has the sauce. And I'll defend the final boss until the end of my days. The story of the DLC is really good. Miquella as a character is extremely interesting, and I'll never say no to a good Griffith homage. In the base game, the game implies the existence of larger Lovecraftian entities, and I'm glad that the DLC expanded on this too with one of the later optional bosses. After all this though, I think I've had enough of Elden Ring. I would really like FromSoft to go back and make another experimental title next. Armored Core 6 was cool, but it's not a part of the Souls franchise. Unfortunately for me, the next game is a 3-person co-op Elden Ring multiplayer game, using repeat locations, assets, and bosses from the game. Just when I thought I was going to get something new from FromSoftware, they pulled this out. I seriously don't even know why I give them my money at times.
Is that the Nameless King?
So I finally decided to play Street Fighter 6. I actually picked this game up on launch day, but I never played it because I was busy with other stuff, and I knew if I started playing it, I would become too committed. Well, it's been a year and I decided to dive into the game, and I can say with confidence Street Fighter VI is the best fighting game you can get currently right now, and it's not going to be topped for a very long time.
Oh shit.
Fuck! What?
Oh my goodness. What is the range? Oh my god.
Get away from me! Get the fuck away from me!
Get off me! What the fuck? You're done. What? I'm closing the game.
You gave me a real workout there.
Oh my god.
Agitating time. Agitating time. Agitating time. Whoa! Ain't no way! Ain't no way!
Really? Fuck you! Fuck you! I hate Ryu, that was such bullshit.
Fuck! You fucking German twink, get the fuck over here!
What? How? Fuck you! You fucking asshole. Ow, mine had no remorse.
And he fell for it.
Thank you, Street Fighter. I know you just love Jury so much. I know that the only reason she's in this game is to draw a certain demographic.
Motherfucking tool, get the fuck over here!
Holy shit!
What? It's not my first fighting game. I put my time in on Street Fighter V, I played a bit of 4, I think Marvel 2 and 3 are fun party games, and I got pretty good at BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. Street Fighter VI kinda goes back to basics with its approach. It emphasizes fundamentals and core mechanics a lot more than 5 did. Even the base roster of the game screams Street Fighter 2. After about 100 hours, I decided it's time to stop playing on pad and finally move on to stick. I picked up a Kwamba Obsidian 2 on sale and kitted it out to my liking. Now it's been about 200 hours and I grinded my way all the way up to Platinum, but I spent so much time honing my fundamentals I never actually took the time to learn some combos, so if I want to make my way to Diamond, I'm going to have to lab pretty hard. I think Street Fighter VI is probably the best new fighting game you can get right now, at least in comparison to how Tekken's doing, and Mortal Kombat 1 is an absolute joke in comparison. I love Street Fighter VI, and the game is generally pretty well balanced at lower to mid-level play, and I haven't had this much fun watching EVO in a long time. But Capcom hasn't been too keen on updating the game. We get a new fighter maybe every 4 months or so, which is cool, but every character in the game only has 2 costumes. In comparison to Street Fighter V, it makes me feel like I'm dying of dehydration. We have a pretty good reason for why this is the case. The production pipeline of the game takes 2 months to complete just 1 costume. In addition to this, Street Fighter VI's internal development team, Capcom Dev 3, is all hands on deck on finishing Monster Hunter. I wish Capcom could bring on some more hands to help with the post-game support for Street Fighter, but unfortunately, franchises like Street Fighter and Monster Hunter just don't sell as well as something like Resident Evil. I think by the end of this game's lifespan, it will be in a much better spot than Street Fighter V was by the end, assuming it can match the sheer scale of that game's roster. Street Fighter VI's art direction alone clears the look of Street Fighter V by a mile. A lot of Capcom's older games had a more anime or exaggerated look to them, and while bringing Devil May Cry to a more photorealistic art style worked really great, I love the middle ground they found when they brought Street Fighter to the RE engine. Everybody looks absolutely fantastic, and I really hope Capcom just continues to update this engine rather than replace it. Every game they make with it looks fantastic and runs fantastic, which I can't say for other game engines. I'm also glad that Street Fighter is now open to crossovers now. Terry and Mai being in the game is absolutely crazy, seeing how reserved they were about crossovers since Tekken X Street Fighter. Honestly, I would still love them to bring back series icons. I played Sakura mainly in Alpha 3, and I was really sad that she isn't in the game, especially hearing others like Armika, Sagat, or Vega, just to name a few. I also have to give praise to the story mode. Historically, most fighting games lacked a true story mode, and if they did, they would have one where they were typically pretty bad. Usually just long cutscenes that were used to get 2 characters and an already made stage so they could duke it out. Rinse and repeat for a few hours, and that was it. But the masterminds at Capcom somehow managed to make a dynamic fighting system where you can challenge and fight others wherever they are. Finally, after nearly 30 years of this franchise, you the player can truly fight people in the street. Unfortunately, even if the story mode is a lot of fun, the actual plot isn't too interesting, since it mainly revolves around you the player instead of the characters we all know and love. It's basically just you going around and the game telling you, hey, this is what this character's been doing after they defeated M. Bison. It is really cool that with each post-game fighter released, they're added to the World Tour mode with a small, yet cool side story to play. The World Tour mode is primarily fan service, so I wonder how someone who has no attachment to prior nostalgia to these characters would see it. Fighting games are no stranger to amazing music, and Street Fighter historically has always put out banger after banger. Unfortunately, I don't think the music in Street Fighter 6 is nearly as good as the prior entries. Some characters like Cammy or Ed have really good themes, but the majority of the fighter themes are pretty forgettable in my eyes. If Capcom decides to make another Marvel vs. Capcom game, I really hope they can come back with an amazing soundtrack, and maybe bring back the X-Men too. Also, they're adding Mai really soon, or by the time this video is out, she's probably already out, and I am very normal about her. There's just something, I don't know what it is, just something about her. I don't know what it is. This year, I went back and played the original Silent Hill. I finally picked this game up on physical for way too much money, so that I could play it the way God intended, in a dark room in front of a large CRT. I already played Silent Hill before, but it was a long time ago when I was a teenager and it was on an emulator. I didn't even get the true ending either, just the good ending. If you're wondering why right now the footage looks so low quality, it's because this is captured on original hardware without an upscaler. I don't really have the money to buy one of those. Silent Hill, to me, is a technical marvel. The game was made pretty late into the PlayStation's life, so by then Konami had a pretty good understanding of the system. I think the entire game is a flex to the rest of the PlayStation games industry at the time. It featured full 3D environments with a dynamic camera, full voice acting, FMV cutscenes, and it fit all on one disc. Most developers would be pretty hard pressed to do that on the PS1 without sacrificing some of the other things I mentioned. This game is generally pretty overlooked in comparison to the rest of the franchise, which is such a bummer since it has such a unique vibe and aesthetic from the rest of the series. It truly feels like an episode of Twin Peaks come to life. Everybody talks like they're in a Lynch film, and the music at times does too.
What's your name?
Harry. Harry Mason.
Sybil Bennett.
Silent Hill 1 has a huge emphasis on more industrial tracks, more so than the rest of the games. The song that plays at the beginning of the game when Harry first enters the Otherworld straight up sounds like a scrapped Trent Reznor project file. The credits song for the true ending is also straight up one of my top 3 Silent Hill tracks, maybe even my favorite. The melancholic melody of the guitar matched with the piano fits so well for what's otherwise a pretty bittersweet ending. I'm not the biggest fan of remakes and remasters, but if Konami wants to keep heading in this direction of remaking older titles, I would be okay if they decided upon this one next. Then maybe younger players will be able to play it. The original game doesn't even control that bad either. I know tank controls are pretty infamous for being clunky, but I swear, if you just sit down for like 10 minutes, you get used to it and suddenly you forget about them entirely. Harry as a protagonist also has a huge soft spot in my heart. Personally, I really like when my horror protagonist is a good person, even if Silent Hill 2 is really great. I also really like the area the game takes place in. Harry explores a good amount of old Silent Hill, north of Toluca Lake, while Silent Hill 2 and 3 take place mainly south of the lake, where the main part of the town is. The worst part about these games, however, is that unless you're a collector, you shouldn't be paying triple digits to play these games on original hardware. I think playing Silent Hill on original hardware is pretty essential to the overall experience. The scanlines help hide the imperfections seen in the graphics of the time. Like the snow that falls at the beginning of the game are squares, but on an error-appropriate display they look circular like intended. Like, seriously look at this game and tell me it looks better like this. If you want my advice, get a free CRT off of Marketplace, grab your dusty PS2 from storage, and free McBoot the shit out of that thing, and then just load the game off a hard drive from the back. I don't recommend flash drives because sometimes they can have trouble loading the FMV cutscenes. Really, any CRT on Marketplace will do. Try to stay away from things with RF connectors. Composite is fine, but try to go for something with S-Video or Component, even if Silent Hill 1 may look better on Composite if you ask me. Despite the game's age, Silent Hill 1 can still be pretty scary. When I first played the game, I still remember audibly shouting, "What the fuck is that?" when I entered the school for the first time and came across the weird squeaking baby things. Or the damn locker room jump scare. I'll admit, I completely forgot about that, and it totally got me at like 1 in the morning when I was playing it again on CRT. A lot of the community loved discussing the side characters of Silent Hill 2, but the side characters in the original are seriously really good. Aside from Laura and Eddie, I think the side characters in Silent Hill 2 rarely interact with each other. Like, I don't think Angela and Eddie are even aware of each other's existence at all. But Silent Hill 1 is different, where we get to see two characters who actively hate each other. We and Harry are caught in the middle of the two, when our top priority is just to find our daughter. Lisa Garland didn't deserve anything, by the way, and Kaufman totally deserved everything that happened to him. I think playing a game in an environment like this really helps to amplify the relationship I'll have with it later on. When I was 12 years old, I saw my brother playing Resident Evil 4 on his GameCube. I always thought the game looked really cool and fun and I wanted to play it, but I always had this weird thing where I couldn't just play the 4th or 5th game in a franchise. I had to play them in order from the beginning, and I still do hold this sentiment. So, we went out to a retro game store and I begged my brother for a copy of Resident Evil Remake. By this point in time, it had to have been 14 or 15 years old. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I think Resident Evil Remake might be my favorite game of all time. It's so special to me I'm not even going to talk about it here. It deserves its own video. The reason why I'm talking about this is because playing a game in a dark room as a distraction from real-world responsibilities, or perhaps personal troubles at home, has always elevated my feelings for a great game. Resident Evil, RE4, Silent Hill 1 and 2 and 3, Max Payne, Dead Space, Devil May Cry 3, Final Fantasy titles, I could go on. All these games I visibly remember beating late at night as a distraction from other things in life, and I can't thank these games enough for that. They aren't just games to me anymore, they're almost comfort food. Sitting in front of this giant CRT at 3 in the morning bawling my eyes out at the ending of Silent Hill 2 again is a feeling I'll always be chasing. It's why I'm so eager to go back and play older horror titles, because it's a feeling that not a lot of people can replicate today. Your retro console won't last forever, retro game titles are going up in price, and CRT TVs are getting rarer and rarer every year. You can call it nostalgia for a bygone era, but it doesn't change the fact that a lot of my favorite genres just aren't as popular as they used to be. Survival horror isn't in its heyday anymore, and it's been carried by indie titles for years. Every action game wants to be a Souls-like, and JRPGs are getting released few and far from each other today. But maybe these long development times aren't all that bad. It gives me plenty of time to go back and catch up on all these classics. Thanks for listening. Alright, enough with the sob story. I hope you guys aren't tired of Silent Hill, because this is when shit gets really good. Silent Hill 2 Remake is phenomenal. It's seriously everything I ever wanted from a game I never wanted to see remade. I'll admit, I was totally on the hate train for this game prior to its release. I was, and still kind of am, a Bloober Team naysayer. I thought Blair Witch was cool, but I was really disappointed by the medium. That game was not good. So you could probably understand me and a lot of other people's concern that a team that, in my opinion, made like one good game was remaking one of, if not the best horror game of all time. It sounded like a true recipe for disaster. I thought we were seriously about to see a Halo Anniversary Edition level disaster. But, thankfully for me, and everyone else who was worried, this is a phenomenal remake. I'm not even really a stickler for modern graphics, but goddamn this game looks unreal. Every emotion, every facial cue feels intentional and meaningful. This was really only possible in the FMV cutscenes in the original, but those lasted 5 seconds at most. Detailed facial expressions are something that you really only see in huge big budget titles. Say what you want about The Last of Us, but the facial capture in those games are really important to how the characters are portrayed, and even more so in Silent Hill 2, where the story is more interpretive. The voice direction also has so much thought behind it that every inflection or exhale feels like it has room for interpretations.
Huh? Yeah, 3 years ago. It's just... I got a letter from her.
Luke Roberts seems to follow in the footsteps of the original dub and not the weird Troy Baker dub for the PS3. Everything from the original's dialogue is entirely intact. The Lynch-esque style of speaking is still ever present, but amplified with the use of modern facial capture. The combat of the original Silent Hill 2 wasn't really that good. You could spam heavy attacks and leave most of the combat encounters with nothing more than a scratch. But the combat in the remake is pretty good. Usually, with more emphasis you put on a combat system, you start to take away from the emphasis on the survival part of survival horror. That's why Resident Evil 4 isn't survival horror. Thankfully, Silent Hill 2 Remake is able to improve the combat to be more engaging and genuinely pretty difficult without sacrificing any of the horror elements. It has the Last of Us 2-esque melee system where you have to dodge when the enemy attacks and attack directly after. The attack animations in the remake are less predictable than something like The Last of Us 2. They all have different timings and keep you on your toes, and it really gives a struggle to the player of, do I use my precious ammo to safely take out the enemy at a distance, or do I risk damage in a melee encounter to save my resources? This really wasn't a consideration to me in the original because of how busted heavy attacks were. All the new character designs look spectacular. James looks pathetic, like he should. Angela looks really pretty. Eddie looks like a tub of lard. Laura has freakishly long arms. And Maria, oh my, wow. What was I talking about? James, I don't even blame you, man, for being seduced by her, man. She could fix me, bro. She could fix me. As much as I love this game, nothing is without mistakes. First things first, I gotta say it's great that Akira Yamaoka is back to redo the soundtrack. But if you ask me, I think most of the tracks sounded better in the original arrangements. Some of my favorite tracks from the original just lack the weight they had in the original version. Some of them are even cut from the game, like the Results theme, which was one of my favorite tracks in the original. Since this game lacks an opening for some reason, now the theme of Laura is the credits theme for the Leave ending, and that just doesn't sound as good as the original in my opinion. It's cases like these where I really wish the developers gave me an option to use the original soundtrack instead. I appreciated this in games like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, where I also felt the original soundtrack was better. Don't get me wrong, the soundtrack of Silent Hill 2 Remake is phenomenal. There are a lot of newer ambient and heavier tracks that sound great. I just think the original arrangements sounded better overall. Another thing that bugged me about this game is that it felt a little too longer than the original. The original game sat at a nice 12 to 15 hours, but the remake stretches into that 20 to 22 hour mark. There's a lot of extra padding that, don't get me wrong, is pretty good, but there's nothing more annoying than a horror game that goes on a little too long. Remember Alien Isolation? Probably the best Alien game to ever exist. And it's a really good survival horror game, but oh my god, that game is almost 30 hours long. For example, in the original Silent Hill 2, the beginning of the game was pretty straightforward. Head into Silent Hill, get the wooden plank, go get the apartment key, and head to Woodside Apartments. The whole ordeal shouldn't take you more than half an hour on your first playthrough. In the remake, however, you walk into town, get the wooden plank, go to the bar, go to the record store, fix the record, go to the Saul Street Apartments, get the button, go to Texan Cafe, get the bar coin, fix the jukebox, head out to the back of the bar, get the Woodside Apartments key, and then head into Woodside Apartments. This probably takes around twice as long as the original, which, don't get me wrong, it's a great remix of the original game, but multiple instances like this just get added to the overall length of the game. Survival horror games have a large emphasis on being brief and highly replayable. It's why horror games have a lot of fun collectibles to play with on repeat playthroughs. Action games too. Spoilers for Devil May Cry 5, by the way, a game that has already been ruthlessly spoiled by the internet. But remember when you first beat Devil May Cry 5, where Nero finally unlocks his true Devil Trigger and gets his Devil Bringer back? And that feeling you got when you started a new playthrough and the complexity of his character just basically doubled? Yeah, I need more games to do that. Anyways, if you didn't want to play Silent Hill 2 because it looks old and clunky, you have absolutely zero excuse now. Go play Silent Hill 2 Remake. Even if you know the big plot twist, the game is still really amazing. Also, did you guys hear about the Silent Hill 2 movie they're making? This shit looks okay, I guess, but it's really funny that they're giving James a V6 Mustang. Like, he's just like me for real. James Sunderland, after the death of his wife, spends his survivor benefits on a sports car to deal with his sorrows. I cannot wait to see this movie. It looks deliciously mediocre just from the production images alone.
Alright, so now we put it in drive, yeah.
That guy.
Hey! Ah! Last year I put probably over 50 hours on Lethal Company. If you've been on the internet for even 5 minutes, you know what Lethal Company is. This genre of 4-player co-op extraction games have gotten really popular in the last few years. First it seems it was Phasmophobia, which was really fun, but Lethal Company is by far the best. You want to know what's better than 4-player Lethal Company? 4-player plus modded Lethal Company. This section is kind of hard to write because I'm not going to explain how Lethal Company works. You already know what the game is. The harder part is picking out what clips to showcase during this section. I seriously have so many I could share, but I don't want to bloat this section. Instead, if you and your friends dropped Lethal Company last year because it got repetitive or boring, seriously consider modding the game. Download R2 Modman and set up a mod pack with you and your friends. Here's some of my favorite mods that you can try. Emergency Dice is a mod that adds different kinds of dice that can either help you or fuck over everyone in the game. There's so many dice and possibilities in this mod that I've used it for over 10 hours and I still don't know all the things they can do. I do know that one time it made me really tiny and that was pretty funny. Help, 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 down here, help, 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 help.
What the fuck happened to you?
I don't know what happened. Lethal Casino is a mod that makes it actually fun to go to the company planet. It adds a fully functional casino to the company planet with a working bar, a jukebox, and plenty of rigged games like slots, blackjack, roulette, and a wheel of fortune. I've lost thousands of dollars of scrap to this mod, but when you bid like $300 worth of scrap and double it to make quota, there's really no feeling like it. Premium Scraps is a mod that adds a ton of fun and quirky scraps to the game that you can sell for a good fortune. My favorite one is probably the Friendship Ender, and the name isn't lying. Don't use this on the ship on the last day before you have to sell.
We do a little bit of trolling.
Also, look, it's Harry Mason. Chillax Scraps is a similar mod and the two work good together. I recommend that too. Lethal Phones is a mod that gives everyone in the game a phone that they can take out at any time. The good part about them is that they don't take up an inventory slot like the walkie-talkie, but you have to manually dial the person you're trying to call using a slow and inconvenient rotary. Also, the phone will loudly ring if you don't set it to vibrate or silent, which can quickly get you killed in a pinch.
Where'd you go? Where'd you go? No, stop! Stop it! Phone calls! Phone calls are irritating! Shut up! Phone calls are irritating, please!
Also, everyone is assigned a phone number when they spawn in, so when you start up a lobby, you have to make sure to all trade phone numbers and write them down on a piece of paper.
Here. I'm actually kind of in a bad spot right now, actually.
And finally, we have mods that add new moons. I'll go through these really quickly because I'd rather you explore them yourself. Seichi is a cool Japanese-inspired map. It's fun and has a lot to discover.
Over here.
Oh my god! Oh, holy shit!
Welcome to Ubelterra is a cool mod that adds a new moon. Try it. It even has its own custom soundtrack, which you've been hearing for the entirety of this section. This moon even has its own custom interior that introduces new game mechanics. It's insanely high effort. Black Mesa Half-Life Interiors adds Black Mesa from Half-Life 1. This moon has a custom interior and it's really cool. It even adds a new item that's similar to the video camera from Phasmophobia. 31 Arcadia is a cool moon that adds a cool desert map with these greenhouse domes. Beware the quicksand. Can you tell I use this as an excuse to play funny Lethal Company clips? Seriously, try out these mods, I promise you won't regret it. More Company is also pretty useful. 4 friends is fun, but having 6, 7, or even 8 is downright hilarious.
Oh, watch out, Barnacle. Watch out, watch out! Oh. Congrats. What do I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to...
Mouthwashing is really good. I debated even talking about this game because it's less of a game and more of an interactive experience. I will say right now, if what you're looking at right now interests you in any way, go play this game. It's only 3 hours long and not very replayable, but if you have an appreciation for complex storytelling or deep characters, go play this game. I'll try my best to avoid major spoilers too. I debated even talking about this game initially. To me, mouthwashing isn't a game that really should be discussed or even have a fanbase, to be honest. This game touches upon a lot of heavy subject matter, but a lot of the community doesn't even like to talk about it, using euphemisms when describing it, which to me really brings the maturity of the community into question. The characters of mouthwashing are really at the forefront. It's undeniably a character study first and foremost, and you could probably write a large thesis on each of these characters alone, which is impressive in a game that's barely any longer than a movie. When I first started playing this game, I was really hoping the game wouldn't just be capitalism bad, but thankfully it wasn't. The game has a large emphasis on the subject of taking responsibility and accountability, which never really happens. There's a ton of symbolism in mouthwashing, probably enough to be argued about for years. I love how the game doesn't just touch upon the concept of abusers, but also just as dangerously, abuser defenders. There's a character in this game that's so irredeemable that the community refuses to even say his name correctly, which sucks because he is a really well-written character. He's also just an insane piece of shit too. Okay, this game is really hard to talk about without spoiling anything. If this game interests you, go play Mouthwashing. It's great. Buckshot Roulette is another indie hit that you definitely heard about. This game was really fun when it came out, but I really got into it for the multiplayer. 4-player multiplayer with friends is seriously really fun. I really don't have a lot to say about this one. You can get this game for like $2 on sale, and it's still receiving updates. I think the style and art direction of this game is really commemorable for a singular dev on a computer that looks like this. He really deserves everything that he earned from this game. While playing this game in multiplayer, I think I slowly started to realize that I have absolutely dogshit memorization skills. My friends even created an in-joke that I now have dementia, and it never really went away. My dementia's getting so bad I have to write down what the shells are in my fucking notes app.
You're
You
cooked,
actually
bro.
have
I don't know.
dementia. You actually have dementia.
The last game I played this year was Belial. I heard about this game the same way a lot of other people did. When the Game Awards came out announcing the 2024 Game of the Year nominees, I was like, oh hey, Final Fantasy VII. I'm gonna vote for that. Hey, what's that? That's all it takes. Belial is like crack. All it takes is one bump and suddenly I can't end the night without a few runs of this game. Ironically enough, despite the poker inspiration and the addictive nature of the game, there are no actual gameplay mechanics in this game. I think Belial needs to be commended for just how much it can stretch a single gameplay premise. Every turn comes down to selecting cards and submitting a hand to score chips. It's so simple, but there's so many supplementary game mechanics supporting that core idea that it never gets old. I seriously put 30 hours into this game before realizing what the tag system does. I think everybody has this moment where they decide to check out this game. They play the tutorial, it's a little text heavy, but then 30, maybe 40 minutes into their first session, something clicks. They'll audibly say, I get it. I can't express just how addicting this game is. It's not like Final Fantasy or Stellar Blade where I can just show some flashy gameplay on screen and maybe it'll convince you to play it. It's not a very interesting game to watch at all if I'm being honest. It also features one singular song, albeit with 5 different arrangements that seamlessly interchange from one another. The song is a slower tempo synth melody that never really gets old, surprisingly. When they played that shit at the Game Awards on that guitar, I think I almost levitated. It was so good. You have no excuse to not play this game. It's on every single platform. You can even get it on your damn phone. I have about 35 hours in this game and I've barely scratched the surface. There's so many decks you can use, so many Joker cards you can modify your hands with, and a lot of variety in builds you can run. Yes, you can construct builds in a poker-inspired card game. Gold star, 10 out of 10, go play Belial. Hey guys, I just want to say that in the Silent Hill section, when I got all emotional that all action games want to be parry button Souls-likes these days, I just want to say that I still think that's pretty true. I'm really concerned about the direction of this genre and where it's going, but honestly I'm starting to lose hope. Game developers just don't really seem like they're interested in making action games anymore. This genre seems like it's gonna die a slow death, and unfortunately—
Holy shit, they're making Ninja Gaiden 4.
Yeah, so right as I was writing the script, Team Ninja and Platinum Games are teaming up to make the first Ninja Gaiden entry in 12 years. I seriously can't believe my eyes. I will say that the game looks like it's taking more influence from Platinum's style of action games, but I still have faith that a lot of Team Ninja's DNA will still be in the game. I also do hope that the enemies are a lot more aggressive than they look here in the trailer, but I think they might just not be fighting back for trailer purposes. This is seriously going to save action games, guys. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. Also, they remade Ninja Gaiden 2 and launched it on the day they announced 4. I haven't played it yet, but it looks like by being on Unreal Engine 5, it's taking inspiration from the original Xbox 360 port by dropping to 15 frames per second in the middle of combat. I'm just goofing, but if it plays like Sigma 2, I'll be a little sad. Well guys, it's finally over. If you stuck around for this entire thing, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. The script took a lot out of me. I didn't expect to write 40 pages on games I played this year, but I really enjoyed a lot of what I got to finish. It's already 2025 and I'm spending it catching up on games I missed last year. This was supposed to come out in December, but I forgot how long it takes to make long YouTube videos. I really could make independent videos on some of these games alone, which is probably what I'm going to do next. If you like this video, hit subscribe because getting a following sounds pretty cool. My main focus on this channel are JRPGs, survival horror games, and action games. If you're into those, stick around because there's a lot I want to talk about. I'm not really good at ending videos, so bye!